Hi friends, my name is Nandita. I am from Andhra Pradesh.
Biology. Biology is the science of life, forms, and living process. The living world comprises an amazing diversity of living organisms. Earlier, man could easily perceive the difference between inanimate matter and living organism. Earlier, man deified some of the inanimated matter like wind, sea, fire, etc., and some among the animals and plants. A common feature of all such forms of inanimated and animated objects was the sense of awe or fear that they evoked. The description of living organisms, including human beings, began much later in human history. Societies which indulged in anthropocentric view of biology could register limited progress in biological knowledge. Systematic and monumental description of life forms brought in out of necessity detailed system of identification, nomenclature and classification. The biggest spin of such studies was the recognition of the sharing similarities among living organisms both horizontally and vertically. That all present day living organisms are related to each other and also to all organisms that ever lived on this earth was a re-elevation which humbled man and led to culture movements for conservation of biodiversity. Children, in the following chapters of this unit, you will get a description including classification of animals and plants from a taxonomist perspective. Children, Crimpton, Germany, ancestor Mary, born on 5th July 1904, and is from the Harvard University evolutionary biologist who has been called the Darwin of 20th century, was one of the 100 greatest scientists of all the time. Mary joined Harvard's faculty for arts and science in 1953 and retired in 1975, assuming the title Alexander Agassiz Professor of Zoology Emeritus. Throughout his nearly 80 years career, his research spanned ornithology, taxonomy, zoogeography, evolution, systematics, and the history and philosophy of biology. He almost single-handedly made it the origin of species diversity the central question of evolutionary biology that it is today. He also pioneered the currently accepted definition of biological species. Mary was awarded the three prizes widely regarded as the Triple Crown of Biology: the Baljan Prize in 1983, the International Prize for Biology in 1994, and the Crawford Prize in 1999. Mary died at the age of 100 in the year of 2004. Children, now let us discuss what is the living world. How wonderful is the living world? The wide range of living types is amazing. The extraordinary habitats in which we define living organisms, be it good mountains, deciduous forests, oceans, freshwater lakes, deserts, hot springs, leave us speechless. The beauty of a galloping horse, of the migrating birds, the valley of flowers, or the attracting shark awake and a deep sense of wonder. The ecological conflict and cooperation among members of the population and among populations of a community, or even the molecular traffic inside a cell, make us deeply reflect on what indeed is life. This question has two implicit questions within it. The first is the technical one and six answer to what living is as opposed to the non-living thing. And the second one is a philosophical one and six answer to what the purpose of life is. As scientists, we shall not attempt answering the question. We will try to reflect on it. Let us. Let us see what is living. What is living? When we try to define living, we conventionally look for distinctive characteristics exhibited by living organisms like growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment, and mount a suitable response come to our mind immediately as an unique features of living organisms. One can add a few more features like metabolism, ability to self-replicate, self-organize, interact, and emergence to this list. Children, now let us discuss the characteristics of living world. Children, already we discussed that the earth serves as home for diverse living organisms. The organisms live in various habitats like forest, mountains, desert, oceans, freshwater bodies, hot springs, polar regions, and almost every place of the earth. Living things possess certain characteristics which make some of these important characters are shown in the flow chart below. Like growth, already we discussed that reproduce, capability to metabolism, and respond to the stimuli. Now let us discuss in detail about each and every characteristics of living organism. First, let us discuss about growth. Let us try to understand each of these. All living organisms grow. Increase in mass and increasing number of individuals are twin characteristics of growth. A multicellular organism grows by cell division. In plants, this growth by cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. In animals, this growth is seen only up to a certain age. However, cell division occurs in certain tissues to replace lost cells. Unicellular organisms grows by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro cultures by simply counting the numbers of cells under the microscope. In majority of higher animals and plants, growth and reproductions are mutually exclusive events. One must be remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. Non-living objects also grow if we take increase in body mass as a criterion for the growth. Mountains, boulders, and sand mounds to grow. However, this kind of growth exhibited by non-living objects is by a accumulation of material on the surface. In living organisms, growth is from inside. Growth therefore cannot be taken as a defining property of living organisms. Conditions under which it can be observed in all living organisms have to be explained, and then we understand that it is a characteristic of living system. A dead organism does not grow. Children, so living things grow by increasing in mass and increasing in number of individual cells. In multicellular organisms, in particular, growth occur by cell division or increasing in number of cells. Growth occurs continuously throughout the lifespan in plants as we discussed in earlier, whereas in animals it occurs up to a certain age. So, however, growing is certain body parts like nails, hairs, and replacement of lost cells occurs throughout the life. In unicellular organisms, growth can be observed under the microscope by simply counting the numbers of the cell via in vitro experiment. Non-living things like already we discussed that mountains, boulders, sand, dunes also grow in size, but just by accumulating the material on their external surface. So, thus the growth in living things is internal, while in non-living things it is an external. It is to be noted that dead organisms do not grow. Now let us discuss about reproduction. Now let us see what is the meaning of reproduction. Reproduction is a characteristic of living organisms, and it is a process of producing offsprings possessing features similar to those of parents. In multicellular organisms, the mode of reproduction is generally sexual. Living organisms also reproduce by asexual means. For example, fungi spread and multiply fast by producing millions of asexual pores. Some fungi, that filamentous algae and the protonema of mosses, multiply by fragmentation. In yeast and hydra, budding occurs to produce new organisms, while in planaria flatworm, regenerations of fragmented body parts occurs. These parts in turn grow as a new organism. In unicellular organisms like bacteria, algae, and amoeba, reproduce by increasing the number of cells, that is, through the cell division. Some organisms like mules, sterile worker bees, infertile human couples, etc. do not reproduce. Hence, the reproduction also cannot be in all inclusive defining characters of living organisms. Children, now let us discuss about metabolism. Another characteristic of life is metabolism. All living organisms are made up of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, size, functions, etc., and are constantly being made up and changed into some other biochemicals. These conversions are chemical reactions or metabolic reactions. There are thousands of metabolic reactions occurring simultaneously inside all living organisms, be they unicellular or multicellular. All plants and animals, fungi, microbes exhibit metabolism. The sum total of all these chemical reactions occur in our body is called as metabolism. Non-living object exhibits metabolism cannot be demonstrated outside the body in cell-free system. An isolated metabolic reactions outside the body of an organism performed in a test tube is neither living nor non-living. Hence, while the metabolism is defining features of all living organisms, without exception, isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are not living things but surely living. Now let us study in detail about metabolic actions. Metabolism gives rise to anabolism plus catabolism, and metabolism occurs in all unicellular and multicellular organisms. It shows two stages, including, that is, anabolism means the process of building up or synthesis of complex substance from simple ones. Example, photosynthesis, and catabolism, the process of breaking down of complex substance into simpler substance. Example, respiration, releasing waste outside. So the main difference between anabolism and catabolism are viruses are considered as non-living things because they do not need energy for their activities. That is, metabolic activities are altogether absent in them. Now let us discuss about cellular organization. The cells are the building blocks of all living things, whether plants, animals or humans. The unicellular organisms are made up of a single cell, while the multicellular organisms are formed by millions of cells. The cells contain protoplasm, means living matter, and the cell organelles inside the cells, which perform several activities at the cellular level and result into various life processes. Children, hence, cellular organization of the body is the defining feature of life forms, perhaps the most obvious and technically complicated feature of all living organisms is this ability to sense their surroundings or environment and respond to the environmental stimuli, which could be physical, chemical or biological. We sense our environment through our sense organs. Plants respond to external factors like light, water, temperature, and other organisms, pollutant, etc. All the organisms from prokaryotics to the most complex eukaryotics can be sense and response to the environmental cues. Photoperiod affect reproduction in seasonal breeds, both plants and animals. All organisms handle chemical entering their bodies. All organisms therefore are aware of their surroundings. Human beings is the only organism who is aware of himself, that is, has self-consciousness. Children, now let us discuss what is consciousness in detail. Therefore, the becomes the defining property of living organisms. When it comes to human beings, it is all the more difficult to be defined the living state. We observe patients lying in coma in hospitals, virtually supported by machines which replaced heart and lungs. The patient is otherwise brain dead. The patient has no self-conscious. Are such patients who never come back to normal life, living or non-living. In higher classes, you will come to know that all living phenomena are due to underlying interactions. Properties of tissues are not present in the constituent cells but rise as a result of interactions among the constituent cells. Similarly, properties of cellular organelles are not present in the molecular constituents of the organelle but rise as a result of interactions among the molecular components comprising the organelle. These interactions results in emergent properties at a higher level of organization. This phenomena is true in the hierarchy of organizational complexity at all the levels. Therefore, we can say that living organisms are self-replicating, evaluating and self-regulating interactive system capable of responding to external stimuli. Biology is the story of life on the earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on the earth. All living organisms, present, past and future, are linked to one another by the sharing of the common genetic material but to varying degrees. Children, once again discuss about physical and biological hierarchies. There is a physical non-living hierarchy and biological hierarchy in the organization of living body. In the physical hierarchy, various non-living components aggregate to form compounds, which finally enter the living world into the form of a cell. These cells organize to form tissues that form organs, and several organs combine to form organ system. Finally, many organ systems organized and form a living organism. The properties of tissues are not present in the constituent cells but arise as a result of interactions among the constituent cells. For example, bone is a hard tissue which provides framework to the body, but the cells present inside it do not have this property. This phenomena of interactions between various components of the body results in the hierarchy of organization. The various life processes are the result of these interactions and coordination. The complexity in organization enables living organisms has to be self-replicating, evaluating, self-regulating and responding to the external stimuli. All living organisms along with their ancestors and the descendants are linked to one another by sharing of a common genetic material in the form of DNA in varying degrees. This DNA is responsible for expression of specific traits in organisms. Thus, biology is the story of life on the earth, and it is the story of evolution of all living organisms on the earth, as we discussed earlier. Thank you.